Right, okay, so what we have here is a Nintendo. Um, has a typical problem they all tend to get, which is the cartridge slots failing, and you get the solid red light, grey screen, or just a blinking red light. So I'm going to be repairing this. So I'm going to get started just by undoing it, taking it apart. So get on with that. I do recommend a good high quality screwdriver for this. I use the German made Wera brand, but there's plenty of others out there that you can pick from. Just any good quality one that isn't going to strip the screws, because bear in mind on these old Nintendos, you know, they're 30 odd, 35 years old, some of them, you know, like replacement parts are just harder and harder to come by for these machines. I mean, they're fairly simplistic machines for the most part, and a lot of the components can be replaced, but you know, I mean, I'm sure you could find screws for them, but you know how it is finding an exact match. Always a problem. Anyway, what I like to do to these machines as well is I don't just like to electronically repair them. I like to restore them a bit as well. So if they're yellowed, which this one is actually isn't, this one's in fairly good condition. It could do with a clean, but yeah, it's not too yellowed, so I don't need to worry about that. When they are though, I retro bright them. This screw really doesn't want to come out. It's turning, but I'm gonna stop playing around with that one. Oh, this one's tight. So there are 6 screws on the bottom of these old Nintendos. Easy enough to undo. Okay, that one's undone. Again, it doesn't quite want to leave its resting place at the minute. This one as well. Sorry, not a particularly great view of this going on really, but right, let's see if these screws fall out. One certainly did. Yep, there they come. Okay, and that's the top off. I'm just going to set that aside for now. I'm going to lift up the console. Let's take these screws as well. Apparently there is one still in one of the holes, so let's have a look. Okay, let's push it out. There we go, got it. So, this is one dusty boy. See if we can get a better view of it for you. So, yep, that's dusty. Original cap. Not popped, doesn't mean it's not in good condition. I replace these anyway. Because why not? They're aging. Electrolytics fail, so... But anyway. Next step is to remove this RF shielding, which is dead easy. It's just a few screws again, you know. Basic stuff. So, let's get stuck in with that. And although you can't see it, I'm putting these screws in little containers off camera. I've done these a few times, so I kind of know roughly which screws go where, but it's still good to keep them grouped together, just in case you do get different sized ones. Yeah, nothing more to it than that, really. Tell you what, actually, these old Nintendos are an absolute pleasure to work with because they're such a simplistic design. Although there are major design flaws with it, even though it's fairly simple, and it's mainly around this cart slot, which is why most of them are failing now, actually. And it's because of physical wear and tear. Now, it is possible to refurbish these cartridge slots, and I might do that with this one, but I do have a replacement one on hand, one of these. And they're handy to have. Anyway, just take these screws out. Still a bit stuck. Okay. And there are 2 screws I've deliberately missed so far, which secure the RF shielding down. I don't think I need to take those off just yet, but I will get to it. Oh no, yes I do. Oh, I just missed one here. No problem. Just hiding behind this heatsink for the 7805 voltage regulator. A basic voltage regulator that takes varying inputs and converts them to a 5-volt output, which is what these old glorious Nintendos run on. Ooh, that's messy. Okay. Right. So we're in. And faulty part, usually on these, are these cartridge slots. They're notorious for failing. Really irritating. So what I'm going to do now is take this off the board. And to do that, I'm actually going to have to undo all of the screws on this and the 2 screws on the RF shielding, and that will allow me to lift the PCB off and remove this cart slot. But I'm going to remove the cart slot and I'm going to replace the capacitors while I'm in here. It makes it a bigger job, but it actually makes the refurb have a lot more longevity to it, because it means whichever owner ends up with this machine next, you know, they've not got 30-year-old electrolytic capacitors which are prone to failure. I mean, anybody who knows anything about electrolytics knows that they have a limited lifespan, and most of the stuff built in the 80s, although some of that stuff is really built to last, and these are built to last, you know, they are still, sadly, prone to failure, which is obviously an annoyance. So, anyway, we'll just replace them as part of our due diligence, really. So, get these cartridge slot screws off. I'm actually designing an open source replacement for these, similar to the blinking light Win. And the plan with that little gizmo is to provide the Gerber files for the PCB and the FreeCAD files, because that's what I'm using for the plastic housing. And it will mean that if you want to, you can 3D print and fabricate your own PCBs and just replace this yourself. And I do intend to sell it as well. It's not going to be as complicated as the blinking light Win. That does have a couple of extra features which may be more useful to some people than others. What the blinking light Win does is this cartridge slot is connected via this main board here to a CIC chip. And that CIC chip is responsible for a security check on whatever cartridge you put in. And the idea behind that is to prevent unauthorized cartridges being used on the system. Now, bear in mind that this was an anti-piracy measure from 1985 or whatever it was. Do we want that now? I mean, a lot of games collectors and so on won't be too bothered unless they want multi-region carts. And that comes with its own problems, such as frequency of the display. You know, 50 Hz, 60 Hz, depending on the region of the Nintendo. I believe NTSC US was 60 Hz, and I believe Europe was 50 Hz, which means that your games will run faster or slower dependent on the region you're in, which is just annoyance. Right, we've got that undone. Should be able to raise this now, yeah. So the trick here is you raise this like I'm doing here, and then you just gently pull, and you wiggle this out. Don't force it, and off it comes. And that's the tray off. I'll get it lined up right. There we go. Bit squeaky. I like to apply a bit of silicone oil to these just to stop that squeak. So when I sell them on, they're a bit more like they were when they were brand spanking new. Now this cart slot could be fine. I might just give it a PCB contact clean and see what that does. But anyway, the next step I'll demonstrate here is there are these edge connector controller port wires. There's 2 here. So player 1, port 2. So port 1, port 2. And this one here, this wire, is connected to these power and the reset and the LEDs, which is why there's a few of them. So yeah, so we need to get these unplugged. So be gentle and just so I can show you. Just grip the wire just above and very, very gently. Don't pull this hard. Rock it back and forth, gently, gently. There we go. And do the same for the other cables. It's exactly the same procedure. So gently, gently. I don't like to pull these too hard because it is possible to rip the cables out from the little contacts that sort of live inside this this connector, and you really don't want to do that. I mean, there are ways to repair, sure, but prevention is better than cure. Which is why you should wear a mask in this pandemic. Always wear a mask. Anyway. Oh, bloody hell, this doesn't want to come off. I don't want to yank it. See if I can get a better grip on this side so we can see. Yeah. I don't think this has ever been removed before. I think this is a virgin Nintendo. Never touched on the inside before. Oh god, that sounded far worse than I meant it to. That really sounded far worse than I meant it to. Anyway, so we've now separated this, which is great. We can see that this expansion port on the bottom was never removed, so it's actually in pretty good condition. The inside, actually, although a little dusty and dirty, isn't too bad. I will give it a clean anyway, as I often do with these machines. I might even give the plastic a bit of a polish just as part of the restoration. Anyway, so next thing, we need to get this RF shield off. So let's take it off. And there we go. Nice and simple. That's quite a nice example, this. Yeah, that PCB is in really good condition. At least at a glance. You never really know, but at a glance it looks great. Yeah, those are the original capacitors. I think these, yeah, they did. They came with blue Rubicons originally on the main PCB, which we can see here. So we've got one there. We've got a couple here. These are the only capacitors I actually replace on the main board. I mean, these other ones can fail, but they're far less likely to fail because they're not aluminium electrolytics. I think they're polymer. I think. Anyway. So your next thing you want to do, we'll take this off. So you very gently hold the PCB by the edge at the top here. And gently just edge it off very gently because we don't want to damage these contact pins along the edge. So just ever so gently pull. See it's coming, look. There we go. And this edge connector is actually in excellent shape. Look at that, that's great. I'll still give it a clean up. See, a common problem with these blinking light systems is this edge connector can oxidize as well. A lot of people just assume that it's this connector, and it's not always just this connector. When these get surface corrosion and surface oxidization, it can cause a real issue with the contact between this edge connector and between this cartridge slot. I'm not sure if this is an original cartridge slot. I believe it is. There's no tarnish on it, though. It looks like it's in absolutely excellent condition, this connector. I might just clean it up and see if it works once I put it back together. It might be all it needs. But yeah, okay, so that's that. The next step with these, what we want to do is we want to desolder this from the main board. And when we desolder this, it's a bugger because look at the thermal mass. You look at the size of these solder joints. It is hard to get enough heat on these, and it's kind of a tricky process. And what I tend to do with this is I'll get a larger soldering iron bit, not like that, that's the wrong one. like this one. You know, this allows me to heat much more of the pad at the same time, much more of the solder, and it just makes wicking it up a little bit easier. But again, there's no magic bullet with this. It's a little tricky to do. But we want to get this box off. Then we'll take it apart and do all the usual gubbins that need to be done. So what I like to do first, although you don't have to do this, not strictly anyway, is I like to get a little bit of isopropyl alcohol, which I'm using here. This is the 99% stuff, and the reason we use 99% whenever we're doing electrical work like this is because you're not going to cause any corrosion on the board with water, because if you have, say, 70% isopropyl alcohol, that 30% water can cause corrosion on the board, whereas 99%, you know, you leave behind almost no water and no corrosion. Now, we do have corrosion on this. You might notice on this RF shield on the bottom, we've got a lot of speckling on the housing, and we've got a little bit on the top here as well. There's a little bit of corrosion going on. So I don't know what to expect when we get inside this this RF modulator and power box, but, you know, we're on a journey together on this one, so we'll find out. So anyway, I'll continue cleaning this up, and I assume you can see this okay. Looks like you can. All I'm doing is just going back and forward over the dirt and just getting any debris and detritus off, because one of the most important things when soldering or desoldering is to make sure everything is clean. That is the key to soldering. It is the #1 most important thing. Beyond your equipment, beyond everything else, make sure it's clean. Thoroughly clean. So we got a little bit of dirt on the PCB. That's not the biggest issue in the world, but I'm going to get it off anyway. Again, when I repair these, I really do like to try and, you know, get them as close to as they were when they came out of the factory as is possible. At least at home anyway. Obviously, I can't get it 100% in terms of looking like it's fresh out of the factory. But as we can see, this is coming up quite nicely, actually. I'm not sure what this gunk here is. You can probably see that. It might be flux. It might be very old flux from the factory. A lot of these old systems have flux residues on them. Largely harmless. Largely. Shut up, phone. Anyway. There we go. Well, that's good. You know, there's quite a lot of dust in this area up here as well, and it can never hurt just to, you know, get a bit of isopropyl on there. I'm liberal with it. Why not be? Now, you don't want to be violent in your scrubbing, but you do want to give it a thorough scrubbing, like I'm doing here. But you know what? I do need a better brush for this. So I'll be back in 2 seconds. I'm just going to get one of my toothbrushes that I use for PCBs. I should have had it at the desk, really, but never mind. I'll be back. And without the power of editing, I am back. So let's give this better scrub. Yeah, that's better. There's slightly stiffer bristles on this than the other brush I've got. You know, just go back and forth, and just let the isopropyl alcohol do its work on whatever surface mess there is. I mean, I'm basically brushing away any slight tarnishing or anything else. And what I will do while I'm at it, looking at this board, once I've got this off, this can lie flatter. I'm going to inspect all of the solder joints. I'm just going to look for cracked joints, loose joints, cold solder joints, you know, the usual. Just to be sure that it's in good condition. And any that might be a bit faulty, I'll just reflow. You know, either reheat it with a bit of flux or add some fresh solder. I do sometimes just desolder them and desolder the old stuff, put fresh straight on. Oh yeah, this is taking the crud off quite nicely. You probably can't see it, but there are little black specks on this PCB. Actually, I'll show you this. So if I just switch over to the camera and microscope view, you'll probably be able to see this better when I get this under the scope. So we'll look under the scope here. Are we in focus? Yeah. So if we look near these pins here, sort of 4 in a line. If you look on the board, yeah, you can see there's a lot of this crap on the board, and it kind of doesn't seem to want to come off. Can we give that a scrub? Give it a good scrubbing. Yeah, it doesn't want to come off. I guess it can't be perfect. Yeah, you know. What do you do, right? Anyway. Not a problem. Give it a good rub, though. Give it a good rub down. Get whatever debris we can off. A bit more of a soaking. I know, you're probably seeing, what the hell? He's putting liquid all over a PCB. It's exactly what I thought. I've not been soldering for very long, really, but I don't know. This is something that feels extremely wrong about mixing any kind of liquids with electrical components, because we've been told since we're children, you know, water and electronics don't mix. And, well, that's quite true. They don't. And water can cause all kinds of chaos. But we're not using water, so it's fine. Approved. Anyway. Okay. That's good enough for army work. Okay, right. So, let's switch off my soldering tip. Oh my god, he's touching a hot soldering iron. How can he do this? Ha ha ha. Magic. Also, these modern soldering irons are absolutely brilliant. They allow you to hot swap just like that. Oh, excuse me. Although mine thinks there's an error. Not to worry. Oh, I don't want to calibrate. I just want to select my tip. Tip is this? Can't remember. Need to double check that. This tip is the K tip. Okay. I really should remember that. Right, let's switch over. K, K, K. Why have you got an error? I need to reinstall it. Oh, come on, soldering station. Be just my luck if it's failed. Let's make sure that's properly screwed on. Alright, that's pretty firm now. Let's try now. Oh, there we go. Must have just been slightly loose. Okay, so number 1 in soldering, flux. Never have enough of this stuff. This stuff is the greatest. So let's see if we can get a better view of what I'm doing. I'm just going to move this stuff around a little bit. Excuse the jankiness of it. A lot of this stuff is kind of DIY, including the phone mount. I 3D printed the damn thing. Might not be necessarily the best. Hopefully you get a better view there. Yeah, okay. Let's see if we can get this to focus. Oh, where's the controls? There we go. Let's move that over here, and then let's see if we can get that to focus. Yeah, much better. Okay. So, I like to be quite liberal in my usage of flux. God, it doesn't want to come out. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Probably a bit too much flux, but it doesn't matter. Never have too much flux. I'm contradicting myself. Okay. Great. So that's that. Now this is old flux. Not old flux, sorry. This is old solder on this board, obviously. It's a very old machine. So let's get some desoldering wick. And let's get cracking, shall we? So, first off, I'll snip off whatever old stuff is on the desoldering wick, because I often have bits on here. I desolder a bit, so, okay. And then I might need to crank the temperature of this iron up, actually. Yeah, that's a lot of thermal mass. Let's crank it up to 400. Right, that's a good chunk off. That's another good chunk off. And that's another good chunk off. As you can see, you know, it is coming off quite well. You don't want to linger too long on these pads either, because, you know, the more heat you apply over a longer period of time, and the more likely you are to damage the underlying adhesive and so on. Because all this board is, really, is fiberglass with a copper layer on top, and that fiberglass is held on with some kind of industrial grade epoxy glue or similar. And whilst it's perfectly fine to heat it up to astronomical temperatures for a very short amount of time, the longer you leave your iron lingering on it, the more likely you are to damage the traces and the contacts. Now, fortunately, these are just ground. You know, these are just grounded. These aren't hugely important to the circuit, but these do hold the housing on mechanically. As we can see, we just clean it up. Oh, that's not good. Don't like it when this happens. I've soldered the desoldering braid. Come on, there we go. Happens from time to time. So just looking at the joint, giving it a bit of an inspection. I think that's cleaned up pretty well. I'm just going to look at it a bit closer with my eyes though. I think that's good actually. I think that's fairly well cleaned up. I'm going to give it a bit more of a once over with the desoldering braid just to be sure. So get a bit of flux on here as well. Just a small amount now. So cleaning the flux up, although isn't necessary, does produce a much nicer looking end result, so I usually do. Cleans off with isopropyl. So we just, you know, rub back and forth with your desoldering braid. Same again on the other side. That should be it. Okay, that's one done. Obviously, I've got a few more than one to do. I've got this nasty boy over here as well. So let's get to that. So, you do tend to get slightly better results if you reflow the old solder a little bit first. Just remelt it. So if you do this, keep it quick. There we go, you see? That's been melted. So now, apply the desoldering braid, and up it comes. By the way, if you're wondering about decent, fairly inexpensive desoldering braid, Kenwick. Kenwick every time, great stuff. Dirt cheap. You get a lot of it, and it really does the job. I mean, look at this. This is great. Like, it's taking it right up. See? Oh. Desoldering braid on the carpet there. I don't want that. Unfortunately, I do not have a workshop or a garage or anything like that to work in, so I basically make do in my bedroom of all places. I only have a 2-room apartment because we millennials are getting absolutely boned constantly. You know, all that avocado on toast I don't eat. Those other millennials hadn't eaten it all. Right, okay, that's one side cleaned up nicely. Oh, if you're wondering what I'm doing off camera, I'm just cleaning up my soldering tip in this. It's good to do. Okay, this is gonna be fiddly. Fiddly. Let's get a better angle on it, shall we? Let's see if I can get this under the camera a little better. Yeah, I think I can get it now a bit better. No, I can't. Oh, ready heck. That way. Yeah, maybe. Okay. So again, with a desoldering braid. No, I've got to snip it. Too much in the way. If I snip it there, off you come. And you're just hearing me going blah 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 blah, but hey, whatever. Nintendos are worth it. The old classic systems. Okay, that's wicking up very nicely. Cool. I suppose you didn't see that as well as I'd liked. There we go. Again, this is just a rinse and repeat all the way around. Just be careful. You know, it's very, very easy. Very easy to screw this up. And in case you're wondering what temperature my iron's on, I did boost it to 400C. Now I'm currently running it at 351. And it's doing the job. So cool. That's that side pretty well cleaned up. That's that side cleaned up. Great, right, that's that part done. So next up, one by this heat shield, I suppose. So again, I'll just snip off my excess desolder wick. And let's get right back into the action, shall we? Okay. You know, I probably should have reflowed this first, but you know what? It's coming up. It's fine. Right. Very soon, I need to invest in a solder fume extractor because, you know, I don't really want to be breathing in this flux. It's alright for now because I'm not doing much of it, but, you know. There are a few things in life that you should take care of, and one of them is your lungs, especially during a respiratory pandemic. Oh, bugger, this don't want to come, does it? Right. When this ever happens, by the way, when you have this problem, where you accidentally desolder soldering braid, or solder soldering braid, should I say, what I like to do, crazy as it sounds, is just apply a bit of fresh solder on top, like so. man, my iron really doesn't want to melt this. It's cleaning properly. Let's tin it. Tin the iron. Alright. Sorry you can't see this. I need a close-up for myself at the minute. So just tin up the iron. Problem with cleaning your iron regularly, as I'm doing, is it's more likely to oxidize rapidly. Right, there we go. You see that? Yeah, that came off. There we go. You be gentle if you do accidentally solder down like I did there. The handle came off my wire snips there. I really need to glue these on. Anyway, tangent for another day. Right. There we go. That's snipped off. Let's get back in at this. Get a bit of extra flux on here. In fact, I'm going to reflow this while I'm at it. See what I've done wrong. Okay. So, just a quick reflow. Come on, melty, melty. Thank you. Melty, melty. Thank you. Right. Now melty, melty again and come off the board. I don't want to let that linger too long. Rinse and repeat. Melty, melty. Melty, melty. See if we can remove some more of this T1000 from this PCB. There we go. Cool. We get back in there and rinse and repeat. Some of these angles are a bit tricky. I probably should have just taken the heatsink off that's just here. This heatsink, probably should have removed it for easier access to what I'm doing now. I'm going to be removing the voltage reg anyway and replacing it with a new one. Maybe that'll last another 30 years eventually. Maybe, you never know, this NES might make it till it's 60. Hell, it might outlast me. Right. Go. But you know what? If it outlasts me, at least my work lives on within a NES. Okay. Right. So, yeah, these ones can be a little tricky to get nicely cleaned up. But I'm trying, and it does look like it's coming. Come off the board. Come off. Stop. Stop it. Why? Come on. Be very gentle when doing this, especially if you're on an actual solder pad. Admittedly, an actual solder pad is not going to have the same kind of ridiculous thermal mass that these do. Sorry, you can't see. But these do, because, yeah, I got the solder wick stuck down again. You just got to be real gentle in removing it. Again, you know, as I say, there's an awful lot of thermal mass here. The solder tip's got to heat a lot all at once. Now, I'm not planning to get this perfect, just enough to be able to slip the board off. Good enough for me. Naturally, there is a bit of oxidization in the iron because it is running at a stupid temperature at 358, which is not stupid, it's actually perfectly fine for soldering, but there we go. Right. That is much better. I still need to get a little bit off of this. Come on. There we go. Right. I think that's good. So I think we've just got this last joint here. So honestly, I would say that this is the most difficult thing about recapping a NES is removing this damn thing. Let's just reflow it. There we go, nicely reheated. Yep, good. Right. Look how nice and shiny that's gone. That's what you want to see when you do your own solder joints. Nice and shiny. No defects. It's the way it should be. Okay. So, rinse and repeat of the previous 3, blah, 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 heat up, yep, you're wicking good, okay, and then just remove. And then I'm just going to flip off the excess, get rid, aim again. Get it on the board. There we go. Now rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. You'd probably be better off with a larger piece of desoldering wick to do this. My larger pieces, for some reason, are absolutely terrible, though. I'll just use this. It makes the job a bit trickier, but it works. I am not like the well-known modders. I'm not as experienced and not as quick. But, you know, I still enjoy it, and I suppose that's why everybody does this kind of thing, really. Anyone who does it because they enjoy it. Okay, that's coming up well. See, these two pads are really easy to remove compared to these two. Well, not the pads, but, you know, the solder on them. It's actually just a ground plane. Oh no, sticky flux. Hey, hey, no. Stop giving me grief. Come off. There we go. There we go. Now that should come off. It might take a little bit of mechanical force. You have to be gentle, because obviously you don't want to break it. So, what I tend to use for this is a very thin, flat-headed screwdriver. And what I do is I just slide it between the PCB and the metal housing, and I'll show you that process. And I very gently rock it back and forward just to see if it will come. So if you do this, I usually use this little hole as a lever. And then I raise it up a bit, and I can see there's a bit of flex there. Then I try to come in at a slight angle, and be careful, be very careful. Lift up. Maybe twist a tiny bit. Okay. Be very gentle. I'm reminding myself now. I'm going to try a plastic spudger, actually. Let's try this one. It'll go under the edge. Not really. So it looks like there's a little bit of excess solder on this point. Just inspecting. That looks clean. Okay. So what we can do just run our soldering iron across the pad a bit like this. And what this does is it kind of helps draw the solder onto the pad rather than around the edges. we're basically trying to break that physical connection between the PCB and the metal housing. I just lost my screwdriver then, I was looking around for it. Right. Okay, that's lifting now. I can see that. So is the one behind it. You can see it when I lift it. You can see it rising just a little bit, you see? Which means that that isn't physically connected, but it looks like at the back here, it might be. Now, they are still connected from the top, actually, so I think that's what I need to do next. I think I'd forgotten that I have to desolder these. So what I'm going to do is remove this RF shield, which you can see here. And the way you do it, you just slide a screwdriver underneath and pry it up. So if I adjust my camera a little bit for you guys, I raise it. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so you can see this now. Let's get a bit of focus on it. There we go. So what I like to do, slide the driver underneath and just wiggle it a little bit. Yep. Just be gentle though, because you can bend this metal fairly easily if you're not careful. There we go. And that's up. Oh, there's an awful lot of flux under here. I wonder if this has been done at the previous point. What the hell is that? Oh, there's some nasty in here. Looks like a dead bug. Lovely. Get out of my Nez. Get off my screwdriver. Yeah. Get off. Get. Good enough. Right. So, what we need to do now is desolder those pins I was pointing out. Why have I lost them? There they are. Okay, so if you look, it's these. I've got to desolder that, and that. It's a fairly easy process if you have the right kit. If you don't, it can be a bit of a nightmare. I do have the right kit, but I think I need a slightly different tip on it. So let's do that. Right. So this is a desoldering gun. So what I need are the desoldering kits. Wherever the heck I put those, it should be on this desk somewhere. No. Frankie's too polite. I should be saying bollocks. No. LED. No, that's Kendrick. I keep them here for organisation reasons. What have I done? Okay, guys, you know what? Just gonna pause this. And lo and behold, I have found them. Oh, by the way, pro tip. These desoldering guns, they have little filter pads, and those filter pads do cost some money. Now, what I've been doing is, because of the pandemic, I've been wearing FFP2 respirators, which are basically N95 masks for those American viewers amongst us. Well, it turns out that filter material, pretty good for these desoldering guns too. So if you have a mask that you've used, put it aside, leave it for a month or two, just in case there's anything on it, and then come back to it. And then happy days. You can cut it out into little circles and use it as your filter material. Okay, right, so I've got a nozzle now for the desoldering. So let's put this thing back together. So it's just a case of that. So you won't see this in a lot of other YouTube videos. Everybody's either much more collected than I am, or just has everything prepared beforehand. Me, I'm a regular kind of Joe. I'm a regular kind of guy. I ain't that prepared. That's a real mess. Is that coming off the bottom of this? I don't know. Whatever. Right. So what I'm doing now is powering on the desoldering gun. Stop making that noise. Bloody obvious I'm powering it on, isn't it? I think that hose is a little bit kinked. Let's address it. Unscrew, unscrew. You can't see what I'm doing, but I'm unscrewing something. Right, there we go. Okay, let's straighten it out. Okay, good. Good. Now, if I twist this anti-clockwise before putting it on, that should untwist when I screw it in. You. Oh, that's good. That thing had heated up a bit more than I suspected, and I touched a tip. Fortunately, I'm wearing gloves. It didn't do as much damage as it probably could have done. So I was very brief. Alright, anyway. Cool. Back in the holster you go. Okay. Right, it's heating up. 165, 170, blah, blah, blah. It's a little slow to get up to temp, but it gets there. Halfway. $270, $280, $300. Probably hot enough to melt the solder now, but let's give it a bit longer. I like to run these guns hot and just go straight on the board, straight off. Cleaning its tip. Okay. So. One. Two. Three. Four. 5. And just rock it a little bit. I think I need to apply a bit of fresh solder and then re-desolder it. I don't think it's flowing so well. Easy done though. So what I'll do, get my soldering iron back to temperature. I'm going to put a little flux along the edge of these. A bit of solder. Tin the iron. Sorry, I'm a bit quiet, just concentrating. There we go. Cool. Freshly soldered. Should come off a lot easier now. Does that come loose? Can't tell. Actually, I think I may need the slightly smaller nozzle. I think I used the wrong nozzle on the desoldering station, so I'm just going to turn it off. Let it cool down. While that cools down, I am going to briefly see if this will mechanically separate now. It probably won't, but let's give it a go. So you can see. By the way, I'm perfectly open to suggestions on easier ways to do this. So that's lifting a little bit, as it was before. Let's see if we can slide the spudger in. A little bit. Yeah, this thing is always such an absolute bugger to get off. While this cools down, though, I'm going to pause the video briefly. Okay, so the desoldering station is heating back up. I'm once again going to solder these with some fresh solder and a bit of flux. And again, I'm not doing this to make electrical contact. I'm just doing it so that there's a little bit of mass of solder present so that we can more easily remove it. Fresh solder tends to come off better than old solder in general. Yeah, so, you know, let's crack on. Right, so just cleaning up the soldering iron tip, getting the oxidization off. We have got the oxidization off. So probably shouldn't be using this bit to do this, but it's fine. So come on, solder, melt, 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 melty, melty. Come on, there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, those are resoldered. Cleaning up the tip of the desoldering gun, and let's try this again. This tip's actually too small. Oh, crikey, I'm going to have to do it all again. Fine. Fine, 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 fine. Stop! Now, while we wait for the desoldering station to cool once again, so that I can get the larger tip back on, there is something I should actually mention. And that is that you may be wondering why I don't just desolder it from this side here. And there's a very good reason for that. And I've learned this the hard way, but these via holes are extremely easy to pull. So if you desolder from this side, what can happen when you remove this RF and power box is you rip the via holes straight out the board, which is obviously catastrophic for the NES. So do not desolder from this side. Instead, you do want to desolder from this side and desolder along here, because this is a very simple single-sided PCB. Or is it double-sided? It might be double-sided, actually. But it's a very simple PCB anyway, and there are no real plated via holes that I've seen on this. You're just far, far less likely to damage the unit. And one thing I've noticed as well while looking under this is you take a look at that node there on this voltage regulator. Doesn't that look like it's burned? That's never a good sign. Never a good sign. But anyway, so yeah. One of those. I'm just going to apply even more flux. You may be thinking, oh gosh, he's adding a lot of flux onto that. You don't need that much flux. True. But I'm unlikely to harm it with extra flux. And the thing is, it's soluble in isopropyl alcohol. So what I will do, which is actually good for the general look of the board as well, when I'm done with this, I'll just pop the whole thing in isopropyl alcohol and just give it a bath. Give it an isopropyl bath. And that should come up top trumps. Should come up champion. Yeah. That's it really. So I'm going to pause the video again, just so I don't bore you with waiting for a bloody desoldering gun to cool down, and then I'll crack back on again. And I have to say, actually, this board is in fairly good condition, but I before I stop, actually, one thing I pointed out, and I'll show you on the scope. I've seen this on another NES, actually, and I never pointed it out because I forgot, but I have remembered. If we take a look under the scope here, if I move across and then up, do you see these? Yeah, these black spots all around here. That's corrosion. It doesn't look good, does it? And if I get a better view on my scope, I can't. Yeah, there we go. Looking at that, look at it. It's terrible. I'm gonna have to reflow some of these joints, I think. Just because, I mean, yeah. I could scratch these corrosion points off and then put more PCB mask over the top, UV mask, but honestly, probably better not to disturb it at all. Yeah, there's a good amount of spotty corrosion on here. You can see. Not good. Chances are some moisture's got into the machine, maybe humidity at some point. And then if you look around this solder pad here, whatever this, it's not a solder pad, it's a grounding point, but you see this grounding point in the center of the scope? Yeah, that is not in good condition. It's corroded all around the edges. Naturally, if I enlarge, do you see this corrosion around the edges? What's happened is moisture has ingressed the board and it has gotten onto, well, the underside of the UV PCB mask, this green stuff, and it's caused tiny spots of corrosion in various places. Now, honestly, there's not much point in me taking this apart, scratching it off, whatever. I'm more likely to cause some damage than anything else. I mean, it wouldn't, I'm not likely to triple it or anything, but you can definitely see the issue I'm talking about. Particularly as well, these pins in the center here, they really, really look like they could do with a reflow. So I'm definitely going to reflow those. I'm going to inspect all of these joints, but they don't look great. I'm sure just a little bit of flux and heat will be enough to get these back to how they should be. Yeah, these things happen on machines of this age, though. You know, if you store them in a loft, in an attic, or something like that, or a cellar, basement if you're American, you know, they tend to be areas that attract moisture, and that causes this. It's, you know, it's, I suppose it's kind of normal for that to happen. Actually, because I've been talking for so long, this has cooled down enough for me to touch it. The only thing I don't like about this desoldering gun in particular is it's a ceramic heated core. I've been spoiled by the soldering iron I normally use because that just has a heated tip itself directly. It's not a ceramic core like this. Well, it might be internally, but it just heats so much faster and it cools a lot faster. This thing is a beast. Anyway, let's get it back up to temperature. So let's switch it on. Let's flip this back over because this is the side I want to work on for now. So I still want to get this off. And yeah, we'll get back to it. Actually, I'll go away from the scope view. Might as well just go back to this view. There we go. And get you a little bit more of a close-up on what I'm doing. And just let her heat up. Nearly there, 312. I've got it set to 400. She's a bit hot, but okay. Getting there, getting there. Okay, we're up to temperature, so just clean the tip. Good stuff. It really doesn't look like it wants to do bloody solder. You know what, guys? I actually think that this desolder gun may need a bit of servicing. Oh, for blimmin' heck's sake. Fine. Once again, I pause the video and engage in maintenance. Ah, shoot me now. No, don't. Yeah, so it turns out I really did need to clean out that desoldering gun. It had a huge mountain of solder in it. I think I've got it here. Yeah, it had that beast clogging it up. I think, in fact, it had a bit more than that. It broke into two. Anyway, it's not that big a deal. It's clean now, and I gave it a good, nice isopropyl bath, and as we can see, that is clean, and it's got a new filter, so this should hopefully be good. But what I'm going to do as well as part of the maintenance is just you know, shove this in. Ooh, yeah, that's a little bit clogged. There we go. There we go. That should be good. Just need to pop this somewhere safe. I'm getting confused. Where do I put it? Right here. There we go. Okay. So I'll clean the tip. There we go. That's nice and clean. Now these should desolder much better now. But let's see. Oh yeah, that's much better. Still don't look perfect though. That's for sure. like I'm having some real trouble desoldering this. Now, I don't want to leave the heat on for too long, because there is plastic underneath this. But let's see what that's done. Is it looser? Rock it back and forth. Does feel like it's nearly there now. Ah, there's a tiny bit of solder holding it as well. Just a tiny bit as well. Right. Clean that tip. Okay, desoldering braid, do not fail me. Work your magic. Wick it all off. Wick it, wick it. God damn it. Alright, let's see if that's done it. So, back to the screwy screwdriver. Let's see if we can get it in there. Nope. God, I really hate desoldering these so much. It's the hardest part of refurbing one of these. Okay. Right, that's given a bit. Great, I think I just kind of broke my phone mount. Yes, I did. I totally broke it. I can't adjust it anymore. I just snapped the little screw on the bottom with my leg. Whoops. Oh well. I'll just have to print another one. Alright. Oh, that's given us some wiggle room. Great, that's loose. Right, all the things are loose. It's just this top part that's giving me trouble now. It's just these. Looking at them, it looks like the holes are very tight. I'm actually going to take a look at this under the scope. Let's take a look. Let's expand that. Take a look. Yeah, let's get that in focus. Yeah, look at that. It really didn't want to desolder, did it? It's as if it's taken the top part off and then not sucked the rest through. Now, I know the desoldering gun is clean now, and it was definitely sucking it off better, so I don't want to keep doing this. I don't really want to keep reapplying solder to it, because obviously the more you heat up and cool down a board, the more thermal stress you put it under. So let's just go back to the camera view, and I'm going to do this again. I don't really want to, but you know, needs must as the devil drives. Let's just put a lot of solder on each one. All right. And let's try this again. Wish me luck, people. I think I need it. What I was doing there is increasing my linger time more than I would like in an attempt to get this a bit clearer. It looks like it's done an okay-ish job. Let's check on the scope again, shall we? So where are they? There. That end one looks good. The second one I think looks good. That should be okay. Should be okay. And there's a tiny bit of excess on that end one by the look of it. See if I can get it off. Right. Sorry guys, I meant to switch the camera back. Just give me a moment. Right. There we go. In fact, I'll keep it on the microscope view. I want to quickly inspect what I just did, so... Good, good. I think good. Yeah, I think that's better. I think that's better. Okay. Let's see if we can ease this off now. Is coming a little bit. See, what I'm acutely aware of is ripping pads. You have to be very, very delicate not to. And I'm not. Perfect. I've got it off. Right. Sorry. There we go. It was a teeny bit tricky to get these. Flip it over. Gently, gently. Yeah, there we go. We got it off. Perfect. And this is what we're left with. I actually think this should be slightly lower down. It's almost as if these pins have come too far through on this end. I don't really want to mess around with those though, because I know they can be very risky to it. Anyway, the good news is all the pads are intact. What I'm going to do now is what everybody should do when doing this. Clean them up with a bit of desoldering braid, so, okay. I'll apply flux, because I'm a flux maniac. Flux, flux, give me flux, give me flux! Ha 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 ha! Oh, I've gone mad. Hope whoever buys this NES from me on eBay appreciates the effort that goes into restoring these buggers. Why will that not come? You know, there we go. That flux did not want to come. There we go. A lot of flux, but whatever. Right. So, desoldering braid. Get the desoldering braid. Heat up the iron. As you can see, you really, really have to be absolutely delicate with removing these boxes, though. You really do. They're so easy to damage them. I know, I've done it. Very nice. That's nice and clean now. And if I show you guys and gals, whoever's watching, so you take a look. I autofocus a bit. See how nice and clean those pads are now? That's precisely what we want to see. We want to see those nice and clean so that when we resolder it, it's all, you know, good to go. So, right. Now that we have this off, we can remove this. We can remove this other cover, because before we couldn't, because, you know, the underside was in the way. But now we can. And it's the same procedure as it was with the top. So, you know, you just slide a screwdriver in at the side and you just sort of pry up, and you do it gently, like that. Do it in a few points. Just be careful not to stab yourself in the process. You know, hold it firmly. Be gentle. Don't force it off, because if you force it off, you'll bend parts. So just gently ease it all the way around. Plus, you don't really want to go scratching up the housing. There we go. And that's off. Nearly off. There we go. Now it's off. Now the trick to restoring these and getting the corrosion off is just give them a bath in toilet bowl cleaner that contains acid. The acid will eat the rust away. Then what you want to do is rinse it in water to get off any excess material, any excess toilet cleaner, and then what you want to do is rinse it in isopropyl to get rid of the water, and then it will dry out and it won't corrode any further. Right, so the next step, we're going to recap these. So we'll do this one, and there's 1, 2, 3 caps on this one in addition. We can do those while we're at it. Pretty easy to remove. It can be a little fiddly, but the desoldering gun will get those right off. And what I do, I tend to desolder one, replace it. Desolder one, replace it. Desolder one, replace it. Some people, they tend to desolder all of them and just replace all of them, and that's probably more efficient, but I tend to lose track of what capacitors what. I mean, you could desolder them and, you know, record which one's which, I suppose. So what I'm going to do is remove this first, this heatsink, which is dead easy to do. All you need to do is unscrew it. You take a look, give you a better angle, you can see the screw. And this is a voltage regulator and its heatsink, because voltage regulators can get quite warm. They won't get as warm actually if you give the NES a DC power supply. But keep that in mind as well. It's a 7805 regulator. Yeah, not much more to say on it than that. Now these can be a little seized. They do have old thermal compound. So you just wriggle it very gently, back and forward, back and forward. You can pry it a bit and just, you know, gently remove it. Pull it, off it comes, and you can see the old thermal compound. I will be replacing that. I'm going to desolder this as well. So what you want to do is just set your heatsink aside and desolder the voltage reg. I'll probably put the voltage reg back on last. Might as well. I'll do the caps first. Always remember as well, be aware of the polarity when you replace capacitors. If you put them on the wrong way around, they'll go bang. You put the wrong rating capacitor on, it'll probably go bang. Particularly if the voltage rating is lower than it should be. So, you know, if you replace, for example, a 50 volt capacitor with a 12 volt capacitor, you're going to have bang bang. And it's not going to be good bang bang. It's going to be bad bang bang. The kind of bang bang that goes actually bang and makes you freak out. It makes me freak out. I guess I'm just that kind of guy. Right, we're up to temperature. Let's give this a quick clean. Clean, clean, clean. Good, good, good. Right. You can imagine, it's a case of over the leg, let it melt a bit, wriggle it around, fire the trigger, that's that one done. Same again. Wriggle it around, pull the trigger. Yep. Same again. And then, that was perfect actually. If we look at that, it's just a case of pop. And we're done. That's the old V-Reg off. I think this V-Reg is probably fine. I didn't actually test it, but I tend to replace them anyway. They're very, very cheap. So. Next I'll take the big cap. Big cap, actually pretty easy to take off. It's the same process as I did on the V-Reg. I'm right off, so it's just apply heat, let it melt a bit, pull the trigger, apply heat. Take a look. This one's taking a while to melt. There we go. Pull the trigger, and there we go. And then this big old cap just come right off, see? Now be careful with these. Don't touch the terminals with your bare fingers. In fact, you shouldn't even touch them gloved, and you should discharge these if you're doing this properly. Yeah, just be very, very careful. I am going to do something that might be a bit stupid. I'm going to put that down. Get my pliers, which are insulated. Touch both terminals. What that does is that creates contact. I'm insulated, and it drains the battery right into these pliers. The capacitor, sorry, not the battery. This cap is probably fine. I haven't tested it. I could test it. Well, actually, why not? Why not? I'll demonstrate that. I'm replacing it anyway. Just be noted. So I'm not testing this to see if I can use it because I've already removed it. But, you know, we put this into capacitance mode. Zero it. Oh, there's a bit of dust on this. You zero it by touching the terminals. Boom. Or at least I thought you did. Measuring its own capacitance. Right, okay. And then it's just a case of take the cap. I know the focus isn't brilliant. You know, this might actually be a faulty cap. No, I think that's okay. 0.262, yeah, 62. Yeah, okay. That's fine. That's actually an okay cap according to the meter reading, but again, we're replacing it. So, no biggie. Place it aside. Now, with the big one gone, the polarity on these is always where the line is, so the line will be the negative. Or usually anyway. So with these, we know where all the polarities are. I know the big one's value. That's pretty easy. These smaller ones are, I'm going to do one by one, and I'll put the big one in last. So that's these two. And if you may not be able to see, but there is also what I believe to be a resistor on this capacitor. So you have to be a teeny bit careful because we don't actually want to desolder that component. So again, same as it is with desoldering other components. On it goes. Blast it with that. On it goes. Blast it with that. Should lift right out. Can't get a grip on it with these gloves. Make sure I'm not going to rip the pad off. No, I'm not. Just gently wriggle it back and forth, back and forth. There we go. And that's out. So this one is a 100 microfarad 10 volt. So I know I can replace it with any other 100 microfarad, anything greater than 10 volt capacitor. So let's take a look at what I've got. I've got 120 microfarad, no. 100, 6.3, no. 16 volt 10, no. I said 100 and 100 microfarad 10 volt on that one, didn't I? Yeah. So I've got 100 microfarad 16 here. That would do the job. I'll put that aside. And that's the big capacitors that I need. I've got 50 volt 1 microfarad, no. 47. 25. 2.2 at 50, and what is this final value? Is this the one I really want? No. Okay. So 100 at 10. I'm going to use 100 at 16 volts, which should be perfectly fine. I'm going to double check that I memorize that correctly. So that was 100 microfarad 10 volt. Yeah, I can replace it with one of these 100 microfarad 16 volt. It actually gives it a bit more room as well, much less likely to be overcharged. So pop this in. Negative goes this way, so the longer lead is positive usually. So you just slide them in, like so. And then what we do, once you've slid it in, bend the leads just so slightly, and what that'll do is hold it in. Then we have another capacitor to remove just below it. So that's this one right here. I'm going to take that off. I need my pliers again just because it's a bit of an awkward position to get to. If you take a look, just, you know, gotta lift it out. A little tricky, this one. I can feel that it's... What's that leg holding on to make sure it's not still soldered in? No, it isn't. I don't like this though, because it feels like there's resistance on it, and I don't want to just pull it and then, you know, tear a pad or something. But both legs, oh, one of the legs is bent. That's all it is. Bit hard to see. I should just be able to push it through. Gently push it through. Or maybe if I can just pull one side of it through. I think this side is relatively free. There we go, I've got it. And this one is 16 volt, 100 microfarad. Interesting. Okay, well I can use another of those caps I just used. And again, let's triple check that to make sure I got the value right. So what do we see here? Hard to tell on the camera, but it is indeed 16 volts, 100 microfarads. Yep. So that's just, it's the same type of cap again. So again, we pop it in. Now, there are various revisions of this board that I'm working on. I'm working on the Great Britain version of this. I believe French version is slightly different. They're all made by the same company, I believe. Mitsumi, I believe the company's name was that made these back in the day. I think they're still around, actually. It's funny how some of these old tech giants are just still there. And then finally, we'll remove this capacitor, which is where on the board? Just there. Let's make sure I desolder the correct thing. Yeah. Okay. So that. So here, right here. Done. Flip it back over. Gently wriggle it out. Done. What's this value? This is a capacitor. Actually, it's very hard to read the value on this. I'm going to get this one under the scope because I can't really see it. So let's flip over to the scope view. Move this to view. Get it focused. Not the best scope in the world, this thing. Does the job. Okay, so this is very difficult with my own fingers in the way. So 10 microfarad, 35 volt. Okay. Pretty sure I have one of those knocking around. So this is 220. No. No. I said 1035, didn't I? Is that what I said? Or did I say 25? See? 1035. Okay, so this one's not right because this is a 25 volter. So no. No. Ah, yes, actually. This is a... These should do the job. So I said 35 at 10, and I've got some 50 at 10. I should do it. I got all the joys of removing this from its silly packet. Woohoo! Right. Yeah. Hate when caps come like this. But, you know, you make do with what you've got. Make do with what you've got. So, it's precisely what I'm doing right now. So, open her up. Ah. Oi, 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 oi. I actually watch a YouTuber called Bruce Rain, and he has a channel called Brankus Creations, and he's got some extremely good beginning soldering guides, and yeah, he's been quite a useful resource for me for learning, and I'd highly recommend you watch his channel and maybe watch some of his live streams. He's particularly good. He's a very friendly fella as well. He's good to his audience. And if you actually happen to need one of the older Apple Macintoshes recapped, he's particularly good at it. And he knows those machines quite well, and he knows the general faults that they tend to have. So if you ever do need an Apple Macintosh, something like an Apple II or whatever, you know, it doesn't have to be an Apple II, but he works well with that sort of stuff. Definitely look him up. There are, of course, resources online that you can use. Recap a Mac, I think, is one that people use. I don't know, I'm just randomly talking about Macs at the moment, but you know, again, just for general soldering, he has a really nice channel, and I would recommend him. Absolutely. I've never used him personally to have anything repaired. I like to do things myself, but I think if you ever wanted to get something done as a service job, he's the man. He is the man. Right, let's get one of these bad boys. One of these beastly capacitors. One of these on there. So that is a 2200 25 volt, I think. 2200 25 volt, clearly labeled. And this one was 2200 25 volt. So yeah, happy days. Right, let's get that installed, shall we? So let's put this back into its correct bag. I order capacitors from mouser.co.uk. They're very good, actually. It tends to be that their stuff gets shipped in from the US, from Texas, I think. But it arrives incredibly quickly. So quickly, it actually really does surprise me every time. And it shouldn't, because I've gotten used to it. But great service. Okay, there we go. So that's that. Great stuff. All I've got to do now is solder it. So what I'm going to do, I don't want the big flat soldering tip for this. I want a nice conical tip. I'm a fan of conical tips. So I'm swapping out my soldering tip for... No, not that one. For this one? This one a bit big. It's quite large, that. For a slightly smaller. No, actually, I think I'm calibrated for this one then. I have to calibrate the next one. Wait, which one is this? Obviously used it, but I'm obviously used. See now I'm looking for the soldering tip I like. Is it this one? No. No. Yes, found it. Found the one I want. This is the BC2. Okay. Plug that in. Right there. Put the station on. The nice thing about this soldering station that I use is you can calibrate multiple tips for it and it will remember temperature calibration of each one, so you don't have to keep recalibrating, which is a really super nice feature. Some soldering stations don't allow any kind of calibration, and you're basically just sort of flying by the seat of your pants. That's even worse, to be fair. But this one is a very nice station. Cheap too. Yeah, it's a reasonably nice joint. Come on, I don't want to linger on this too long. Go. A bit of oxidization. Let's sort that out. There we go. Okay. All of those look to be soldered okay, except one leg on the huge cap, which could do with a little bit of flux and a reflow. It's not the nicest joint. So, bit of flux and a reflow. Much better. Oh, that's so much better than it was. Okay, great, great. Now, I think my solder joints all look good, so I can begin the snippy, I think. Yep. Okay. So as you can see, you know, we've got these big sticky up legs of the capacitors just, you know, willy-nilly in the air. That we can't have that, so you got to snip. No. Nice and low. Snip. I snip into a little empty Tupperware tub, by the way. That's why I moved it off camera. Again. Same again. Snip. And the same for all the legs. Just, you know, go around. Snip. Snip. Just as well I don't give people vasectomies. They'd be terrified if I just go snippy snippy. You know. There we go. Right, cool. So let's have a look under the scope and inspect my handiwork and see if any of the other joints that exist need to be reflowed. Now, I think we're largely good. So now, so right, we are looking at the board. Let's get it in focus. There we go. So where are my joints? So let's take a look. I'm not completely done with this. I do have a voltage regulator to attach as well, but okay, the big cap's over here, so let's look at that. So a bit of focus in. That's a nice joint. That looks good. That looks good. Okay, that's great. So we'll move across. Those are both mine. Yeah, that looks okay. And then we go further down. I'm actually getting a bit of lag on my microscope right now. It's kind of awkward. Those are mine. Those are nice clean joints by the look of it. Yeah, those are great. As you can tell, I don't do a rush job on these. I take my time, I make sure that everything is good, you know. A lot of people just kind of blast through, which is fine because some people are that experienced that they can. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm so inexperienced that I can't do it or anything, but it just takes me some time. Just takes time. That's all. So, taking a look at this. That's an old joint, but it looks okay. Old joint looks okay. Old joint looks okay. Could be one above it here. Looks fine. That looks fine. These boards have a really interesting and strange design as well. They look fine. They kind of run traces on top of the UV mask, which is something I've not really seen done elsewhere. I mean, maybe some other people that do this kind of work come across it before, but I certainly haven't. So that looks good. That looks good. Okay, let's get that focus better. Yep. I mean, a lot of these have definitely got old flux residues around, which aren't my doing. Some of it is, but not these. Okay. That was my one, I think, wasn't it? Yeah. That was mine. I mean, for very old solder joints, a lot of these are still in pretty good condition. Sometimes they kind of degrade over time and they can get a bit unpleasant. Okay, we're looking good here. We're looking good. I've not inspected everything, but I'm still going around the board. Again, I like to do a good job. If you're going to do a job, do it properly. I mean, I could argue that, like, the longer I spend doing this, the more I devalue my time based upon the final sale price of the item, but there is a balance. I'll cap it out at a set sale price, and whatever I lose in time, I lose in time. Because I actually enjoy doing this as a hobby. I'm not really doing this as a business, so what I do want is for the next owner to have this and to have it for a long time and never really have to worry about anything going wrong on it. And of course, if anything does go wrong, I'll be happy to repair it, but yeah. So looking at this, looking good, looking good. Actually, all of these joints, they look fine. They all look good. So what I'll be doing next, before I solder on the new regulator, lives where my index finger is here. I'll be giving this an isopropyl bath, and I'll just be wobbling it around, agitating, getting the isopropyl in everywhere, and that'll remove all of the excess flux we've got on there at the minute, because I've added quite a lot. And it will get rid of all of the old flux as well, and I'll give it a bit of a scrub with a toothbrush as well. I'm going to do that completely off camera. I'll be back soon, and we'll pick this up. There's actually only 3 more capacitors to do, and the voltage regulator, and that is the recapping portion done. And the last portion of the refurb will be the slot. Now I will try to I'll try to use the original one. I don't think we'll have any issues using the original one, to be honest. It looks like it's in good condition. In fact, it almost looks like it's in too good condition. I'm looking at it going, is this actually new? Hard to tell. It's in such good condition that I wouldn't be surprised if this has been switched before. Anyway, I'll give the board a clean and so on. Original cart slots actually are not the best. A lot of people will argue that you clean them and like keep them forever and so on, and it's not bad advice, and certainly that's the first thing you should try. But if it keeps becoming a problem, eventually you just can't beat, you can't defeat, you can't get past the fact that it's just mechanically worn. Once something's mechanically worn, you can't unmechanically wear it. You know, you can retension the slots and stuff on these cartridge slots, but it's a band-aid, not a fix. The only real fix is to either replace it completely or get a blinking light win or similar, or the thing I'm developing, which I'm keeping semi under my hat for now. But again, it's going to be open source when I'm acquainted with it. So I'm going. Okay, so I stood up for a reason. I was going to give this a bath. Oh, and the other thing I was going to do was grab my voltage regulators, which I think are in here. Yes, they are. Got plenty of them. Great. Nice. Got plenty of voltage regs. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, so time to pause this. And I'll be back when this is cleaned up and we don't have all this nasty gunk all over it. So the ideal way to clean these is usually to use something like an ultrasonic cleaner. I don't have that. What I do have is a buttload of isopropyl alcohol on some of these. So what I like to do is this. This does a good job of getting any old flux residues and things like that off the board, because the isopropyl will dissolve it. And obviously any other debris and rubbish that gets in there gets removed as well. So you just sort of shake this back and forward, give it a good rinse, and yeah, that'll help remove all the mess. Just lightly and gently agitate. As you can see, it's coming off. Actually, you can't see that. I can't see that, to be fair. But as you can see, agitating it. We take a look. So we've got the board there. If I flip it over, still some crap on there. Give it a good clean. Most of the flux residues are gone at least. There are little spots on there and I'm not sure what they are. Could be a mounting point for something underneath this. Yeah, I think that's a mounting point. I don't think there's actually any dirt. So give that a good bit of a clean. Do this in a well-ventilated area if you're using isopropyl like me as well. You don't really want to be huffing this stuff unless you want to get, like, drunk on fumes or something. Or go blind. He's like Russian vodka. He send you blind. Although that's not true, actually. Some of the best vodka in the world is Russian. So please excuse me. Don't kill me, Mr. Putin. I actually quite like Russia. It seems cool. Actually, it kind of does. I really want to go to Moscow someday. It looks like a really interesting city to visit. So, yeah, there we go. We've got all of the crap, all of the old thermal grease off. 30-year-old thermal grease. Actually, if anything, it's probably going to be a hindrance rather than an aid in the condition of this. And while we're at it, let's just give all the exterior a nice clean. Like so. Clean the power jack. Clean the RF connector, which we can see here. You know, all I'm doing is like scrubbing all around, including the actual inside of the connector. And again, it can't hurt to do these things. And the same with on top. Now, it is important to make sure that you don't have any isopropyl alcohol on the board when you come to switching it on, right? Now, isopropyl alcohol evaporates at a relatively low temperature. It'll evaporate at close to room temperature. But what I do to make sure that these are thoroughly dried after I've done this is I will put them in the oven at about 70 degrees Celsius, something like that. Relatively low temperature. And I'll leave them in for about 10 to 15 minutes. Pull it out, check on it. And if it needs a little more time, put it back in. And rinse and repeat until it's dry. I'm not going to do that right now. I don't need to do that. I'm just going to set this aside and let it air dry. I'm not in that big a hurry. Windowsill. And the next thing with this is to move over to this bad boy, the motherboard. I'm going to clean these edge connectors lightly. To do that, I'm going to use a green scouring pan, the type you would use on dishes. And I'm going to very lightly scrub it with some electrical contact cleaner, but you can, of course, use isopropyl as well. Where is it? Where is it? I tell you, like everything in this apartment, my PCB stuff's on. It's on vacation. I don't know where it is. It's acrylic lacquer. Don't need that. Don't need the air duster. Certainly don't want to spray it in Raid. You know, I'll be back momentarily. I've got to look around. And with the power of pause, I'm back. And it was actually where I thought it was, which was on the windowsill in my kitchen. And I didn't notice at first. So what I like to do anyway, and I should have listened to my fiancée. My fiancée's always telling me, look behind things. And I always don't. And then, yeah. Anyway, I have to channel my inner fiancée. She puts me in the right direction. Anyway, what I do is I apply a bit of this nice electrical contact cleaner. You can get pretty much any brand. It doesn't really matter. Spray it on your scouring pad. Then what we want to do, run up and down the edge connector. Don't go crazy. Just lightly. Up and down, up and down. And you'll start to see dirt. Even though it looked clean, you will see dirt. You will see some surface tarnish coming off. Won't be much, but it will be there. I'm seeing it come off right now. Gonna be gentle-ish. Because bear in mind, with these green scouring pads, they are abrasive, and it's that abrasive action that's taking off the very thin layer of tarnish. The electrical contact cleaner is just helping us get that off. It's what it's designed to do. It's its primary purpose. As I say, you don't need to go absolutely crazy. You don't need a lot of pressure. You need a small amount of pressure. Don't go crazy with it, basically. You can see what I'm doing, though. You can see I'm not, like, you know, pushing right down on it and so on. And then we just get any, like, surface corrosion at the top. I think this side's pretty much done. I'll give it a wipe with a dry sponge. Let's have a look. In fact, the best way to look at this would be under the scope. So let's take a look at these under the scope. Get these in focus. So you see that? Those are very, very nice and clean. And the contact cleaner evaporates pretty much immediately. It's a very fast acting, fast evaporating thing. And it's got all of that surface tarnish off. This looks great, actually, I think. I'm just going down the line, inspecting it all. And I think I've done a pretty good job on that. Now, if we flip this over, the other side hasn't been done. And you'll probably notice a little bit more of a problem on these. Yeah, you can already see that surface tarnishing, and that prevents a good electrical contact with the cartridge slot. And a lot of people don't realize when they remove their cartridge slot that sometimes it's these PCB fingers and not necessarily the cart slot that are actually the issue. See that? It's terrible. You know, we run down this and it's just, yeah, that's not great. That's not built to last as it is, right? I mean, admittedly, that's about 30 years of grime, probably. So, actually, yeah, I suppose it was built fairly well to last, but even so, you know, they built stuff back then not to be planned obsolescence like they do now, but even so, you know. Anyway, I lament the loss of stuff that didn't break down so easily as modern stuff. Even though modern stuff is faster, better, more energy efficient and stuff like that, I mean, it only lasts you a couple of years before it breaks. Or they just stop supporting it, like Android devices. But yeah, so we go up and down, up and down. It's exactly the same procedure as it was last time. And we just, as you scrub, you'll notice, and I'm not sure if you can see it well on the camera, I think you can a little bit, you'll get this sort of cloudy, dark, what looks like dirt coming off, that will be the surface tarnish. When you start getting that, run down with your sponge and see there's still a bit more of that to come off. So what I'm going to do is rotate the sponge to a side that doesn't have dirt on, like that. This side. Then I'm just going to carry on. And again, the trick here is we're not trying to sand this down to bare copper. We want to leave some of this protective tinning on these fingers, because they do add resistance to oxidization. But you know, you can only fight nature so long, right? And yeah, things still tarnish over time. These are probably zinc plated. Lightly, does it? This side actually seems significantly dirtier, and I believe this is the, yeah, this is the top side. That would make sense. Yeah. This is the side of the motherboard that the cartridges are physically close to. That's why we're seeing a lot more tarnishing. Particularly if, I don't know, one of the previous owners of this machine's been blowing into the cart slot or something, because you really shouldn't do that. Anyway, it's just a case of keep scrubbing lightly, until you don't see any black gunk coming off anymore. And when you don't see that black gunk coming off it anymore, you know you've got surface tarnish right off. Now, with other games machines of the era, Sega Master System and so on, they're actually a lot less prone to this particular problem because they were top-loading models, and the cartridge slot itself is soldered straight onto the board. It's not like some weird edge connector like this. Not that it was necessarily the worst decision Nintendo ever made, but it's certainly not their best one either. It is the single most common failure point on Nintendo Entertainment Systems these days, on the NES systems. It's just, yeah. It was a different time. The video game crash had happened. Nintendo didn't want NES systems to look like a game console of the time, so they tried to make it look something like a VCR player, because that's something that most people were familiar with, and it didn't have the stigma that the old games machines of the time did, because there were so many. You know, that was one of the big problems with that video gaming crash of the, I think it was of the late 70s, early 80s, but correct me if I'm wrong, I wasn't actually alive then. I'm only 33. I'm a late 80s baby. Oh, this is almost bang on now. Yeah, this side was a hell of a lot more dirty. And this is the thing, when you look at it by the naked eye, the very first time you're inspecting it, it can look shiny. It can look good. But you're wrong. You know, it really can look better than it really is. And you know, once you start scrubbing, that's when you realize how bad that surface tarnish is. And again, you got to remember these machines are so old. We're going to inspect this under the microscope again. Same side after being scrubbed. And that should make a much better contact. Now, bear in mind, as I say, I've used electrical contact cleaner and a scouring pad, and it's evaporated immediately, so we shouldn't see any immediate corrosion setting in because of what we've done. If you use something like soap and water, though, You can expect corrosion pretty damn quick, so do not use soap and water for this. You shouldn't take soap and water to PCBs anyway. But yeah, there we go. So that's pretty good, I'd say. I think we've done a good job there, guys. Let's go back to the camera now. So what we have remaining are these capacitors, these two Rubicons and this Rubicon. Now, it's heartening to know that Nintendo did use Rubicons in their systems. Rubicon are actually a very, very good capacitor manufacturer. To this very day, actually, they're highly, highly recommended. They're some of the best on the market, right up there with Nichicon and most other Japanese manufacturers. If you want to buy capacitors, buy Japanese. Always. You know, if you want very good budget capacitors, Panasonic. If you want excellent high-grade capacitors, Nichicon or Rubicon are what I'd recommend, but there are others out there. I would definitely very, very, very strongly recommend, though, that you avoid the cheaper Chinese capacitors at all costs. Not that they're terrible. Not that they're terrible. They will do the job. But bear in mind that although they will do the job, they tend to be less reliable over the long term. And if you're refurbishing something like a Nintendo, you want it to last a long time, right? I mean, if you're just fixing something in your house, some gizmo you've got lying around that you don't care that much about, then yeah, go ahead, by all means, use cheaper Chinese ones. Right, I am looking for a 50 volt 2.2 microfarad. What have we got? We've got 10, 16, 2.2 at 50 volts. That's what we need, right, guys? Right. So let's get into the bag that you can't see me opening because it's off camera. I am sorry, fellas and gals, and there we go. I don't want to break the stickers. They tell me what rating they are. I don't want to break them. Don't want to break them. I really need to stop hitting this camera mount with my knee as well. I've already broken it today. Fine, rip. Rip. Fine. Okay. At least I'm in. At least I can still see what they are as well. 2.250. So I need one of these. Rather a lot of these. Tear it off. And sorry, I'm just sort of muttering, but you know it is. Oh, it did cut through. Okay. Really wish these had come loose. I don't really like capacitors on a reel. There we go. It's just inconvenient. You've got to fiddle around with getting the adhesive off and grumble, 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 grumble. There we go. Cool. Right. Yeah. Right. Capacitors in bag. There we go. So we want to desolder this and get rid of that stupid adhesive. So this one was the 2.2, I believe. 50 volts. Yes, it was. Okay. And that's the one I'm going to remove. 50.2 at 50, yeah. Which is this one. Right here. So let's get rid of that. Oh, getting kind of hungry. That moment you're waiting on your desoldering gun to heat up. Said those two, didn't I? I did. Okay. Now, I know these caps can be a little tricky to remove sometimes. It can be kind of tricky to clear the hole. I think I've got it, though. It's wriggling loose, so... Again, you got to be very careful, because the last thing you want to do is tear up a pad. And it's extremely easy to tear a bloody pad up. No, I keep saying it. But it's the most annoying thing to do. Because then you've got to scrape away a bit of trace, you've got to create a jumper, and yeah. Sorry, what I'm doing off camera here is I'm just wobbling this capacitor slowly loose. Do you see that? See how that's coming? It is loose, and I think the leg is just ever so slightly bent, which is making it just that bit trickier to get out. But I don't just want to brute force it out, you know? There we go. That came fairly easy in the end. And looking at it, we're looking a-okay. There is a small amount more solder than I would like in that hole, though. So what I'm going to try and do is just desoldering gun it out and see if that works. And if it doesn't, well, I'll apply a bit of solder and use some braid. I didn't. Of course it didn't. Okay. Wake up my soldering station. Get some solder. Now we're only going to apply a very, very small amount of solder to this. In fact, probably just enough from the tip. So we just go plop. That has not worked at all. And we just add a bit of solder to the hole. Just like that. You can see there we've got slight fill on that hole. And what we want to do is use some wick and see if the wick will clear it. It should do. Should do. This is a common technique. But let's find out. Nope. Did not clear it. Just add a little bit more solder. You see, the thing is, when we apply this wick, we need the wick to heat the solder beneath enough and to also wick it up. Maybe a little bit of flux might help this as well, actually. Because flux. Miracle stuff. And just blob a little bit on there. Not quite. Really doesn't want to. Really doesn't want to come out. That really doesn't. Well, what I may do then is add new solder again. Try the desoldering then. Let's give it a shot. We heat the pad. Add some fresh solder. Boom. Then soldering gun. That looks like it's done it. Yep. That has done it. You probably can't see it there, but I can see through it now. So next step, let's add this new cap. So flip the board. The board has the polarity. So negative to the left, positive to the right. So we can just slide the legs in like so. And there we go. That is in. Now I like to get these relatively flush to the board, but this one I don't think I really can. It's okay though, that won't cause any harm as it is. So we flip it back over. And let's solder it. So I'm going to add a little bit of flux. Bit of flux there, bit of flux there. And I'm going to solder it. Okay. Yeah. And remember, you're not heating the solder directly, you're heating the pad and the leg. That's good. From it. And this one. One done. The old capacitors into my trash thing. You know, I probably shouldn't trash all of these. Some of them work. Anyway, next up that comes off. Let's do that. The cap's actually come off. The hole is still plugged. Fine, okay. That's that. What we need is that solder to heat through so that it can desolder properly. Well, it's close. It's not desoldered all the way, though. Try it from the other side. Nope. See, this is the part where you have to sort of keep refilling it until you can actually get the whole damn thing out. Really annoying. Try it again. That has mostly cleared, but I'm not sure it's enough to get a cap leg through. We'll find out, though. So what's this cap rated at? This one is 100 microfarad at 6.3 volts, which the board also says. Okay, so 100 at 6.3. We have... Oh, there's somewhere. Got him. Okay. Tell you what, UK government at the minute is so frustrating. So frustrating. It's like, yeah, guys, like, pandemic's picked itself up into high gear again, and you're still screwing around trying local lockdowns, which haven't worked for the last 6 months. Like, give it up. You're not fooling anyone. I've got a feeling that this winter is going to be a very, very bad winter, particularly that we've got, like, morons in charge. Which, to be fair, is, you know, the same everywhere in the world, right? Rich morons. It's always how these things work, eh, guys? Always. Right, anyway, let's stop bitching about that and do this. In you go. Come on. Nice. Right. And again, we'll use a teeny bit of flux. And you can see we're almost there. We're almost there. We've only got one cap after this to go. So flux. Flux. Soldering derp. Get some solder. So that I can solderize this board. Ha 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 ha. Time to solderize the over. Oh, come on. Got that soldering iron slightly misaligned. There we go. Right, come on. Come on. Boom. Inspect this with my eyeballs. Looking good. Get it under the scope as well, I always do. I don't want no shitty joints that are my fault. In fact, I tell you what, like, recently I was looking on eBay for Game Gears, and there's some people that sell the audio boards and the power boards recapped. I was curious, so I had a look. My god, the soldering job was terrible. Scorch marks around the solder pads. Capacitors bent into weird as hell shapes. Now, I know the Game Gear is tricky to get at and has some rather tricky spots to get in, especially if you're using radial electrolytic capacitors on a board designed for SMD caps, but my god, the mess these people are making, it's just, you look at it and you're like, what the hell, guys? Really? Really? You can do better. Anyway, I'm just ranting. So, where is my solder job? Ah, there it is. There's those two, and those two. Does that one have enough solder? I think the very first pin I soldered could do with a smidgen more solder adding to it, actually. So let's just add that. It should be a very small mound, and mine's kind of flat, which makes it potentially vulnerable to cracking. So let's resolve that. Should do the job. Again, we inspect it. I think that's mine. Yeah. Okay, so that's the one that was a bit flat a minute ago. Now, I don't believe it is anymore. Take a look. On the side. It's tricky doing this with the lag on the scope on the PC. There we go. Yeah, that's a good joint now. Okay. So, finally, we've just got this Rubicon cap here, which you can't see because I left the microscope on. This Rubicon cap. What is it? It is a 1 microfarad 50 volt, I believe. Is it 1 microfarad? Really? That's very, quite a large cap for 1 microfarad. I guess it is 50 volts. Right. Let's turn the desoldering gun back on. I turn it off when it's not in use because it has plastic supports here, and I have experienced another desoldering tool I owned once literally melt those, and I really don't want a repeat of that. And plus, I quite like this desoldering gun. Mind you, at least desoldering guns are replaceable. The last thing I had, it was actually a desoldering pump that was a soldering iron as well. It's a weird design, but it was cheap, which is why I got it. Come on, get up to 10. Now, what I'm going to do with this cap I'm going to take off, I'm actually going to add a bit of fresh solder to it straight off the bat. Now, which one is it? It goes left, right. Is that the cap? Yeah. Little tricky sometimes to find the caps, but it's right where my finger is there. You can just see it. So what I'm going to do this time, add just a bit of extra solder to it. Hopefully, that extra solder will give me a bit more mass to remove and give the desoldering pump gun a bit more to work with. So we're just gonna heat it up again. I'll say it again, just heat it up. Add some solder. There we go. And we're going to take it right off, and hopefully this doesn't give me any issues like the other one. Actually, that's not too bad. That came right off. And just to double check, do we have a 1 microfarad 50 volt cap? We do. That is exactly what this one is. So we can dump that. I'm looking for 1 microfarad 50 volt. I can turn the desoldering gun off. 1 microfarad 50 volts. So we've got 16, 10, 47, 16. Right. 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 Ah, yes. Here we go. Oh, nice. They're loose as well. I like it when they're loose. I have to break them off the stupid reels. Okay, so this is an interesting thing actually. You may have noticed the one I just pulled. Was this the one I just pulled? No, that was a 6.3. But the one I just pulled, this one. Look at the size of that. That's quite a large package size, right? For a 1 microfarad 50 volt. Here's a modern one. Again, 1 microfarad 50 volt. Much smaller package size. Same rating. Same radial lead distance. Right, anyway, let's get this installed. So I need to look at the polarity. So the polarity is negative on the chip side, like so. So, in through it goes. Get it nice and snug. I like to install these as nicely as possible so that they don't look janky, so that they look like they came out the factory in the way that I've soldered them on. You know, these machines are old and they're kind of becoming collector's items, and if they're going to be in working order, it's good that they be as close to the factory as they can be, really. And that's what I'm trying to do. So I figure it's good for my customers. It's good for the retro gaming scene, you know. Not that I'm elitist about it. There's plenty of people that mod these. They put RGB mods in, which are a great way to experience the old games again. Why is this? This strange. Oh, don't make me. There we go. Add a bit more solder to that. There we go. A little bit more solder. Do this while we're a bit more solder. There we go. Right. I think that looks good. I'll add a teeny bit more solder. You don't want to add too much solder either. Like, you know, you can add too much. So yeah, it looks like a good amount now. And let's get this snippity snip snips. Snippity snip snip snip. And then we get close to the PCB and we go snippity snippity snap. There we go, boom, done. Right. Now then. let's inspect my solder joint, shall we? Once again, we go over to the microscope, and let's have a look on the microscope. Now, as is a tradition, actually kind of tricky to find where I soldered. Now, there are a bunch of points I actually want to touch up as well before I put this together. I did mention that earlier. I think it's... Is that it? No. Sorry, guys. A little tricky sometimes with this thing. So, it's these ones next to my finger. Yeah, those are my joints. Because this damn microscope's just a mono microscope, I don't get any depth perception, so I have to kind of angle things to get a better view. I think, though, that those are good joints. Yeah, they are. They're pretty good joints. So, I'm now going to touch up the ones that I said looked a bit suspect around the corrosion area. You know what I'm going to do is flow some flux over them as well. This stuff is like miracle substance, honestly. Bit of flux. I mean, actually, this is probably a job I could use my hot air gun on. I could reflow the whole damn board with a hot air gun. I don't think it needs it, though. So, let's just flip back to the other camera again. There we go. All I'm going to do is touch each of them a little bit like this. Boom. Boom. There we go. Inspect them. Area of the board, that's the area that I want, I think. Right here, yeah. There we go. These were the ones that all looked rusted before. I think they're looking better. Oh, these are actually the controller connector as well. Interesting. So let's look at that. You know what? Those are good. Oh, now I've got flux on my finger. Get that off. Right, okay. Okay. Okay, so that, I believe, is most of the soldering. That should be good. There's just a voltage regulator, which I need to put on this RF unit again. This thing. See if it's dried out yet. Yeah, looks like it. Okay. We need to get a reg on there. Easy enough, so we get a reg out. What we also need is the heat shield again. I think actually I need to clean that heat shield. I've not done that. We've got a 7805 new voltage reg. So, real quick, clean this up. Easy enough to do. We'll just get a bit of isopropyl on it. So I'm just not doing it all over my desk. I'm just doing it on myself because, you know, whatever. And then, remove the old thermal compound. Nice and easy. Same for the other side. I always forget these are tricky to get into. Where's this one? Oh no. Fine, fine, fine. Use this one. Okay, there's no winning with these brushes. There we go, there we go. Off the gunk comes. All we want to do is remove the old thermal compound completely so that we get a nice smooth metal surface to place some new thermal compound on and mate the heatsink to the side of the RF unit along with the regulator down here. That's looking good. I think could use a clock though. Next one. So you just want to get it nice and clean and dry and get rid of any of this excess crap that's on here. That's good enough. Okay. Next step. This goes on here. Can't remember which way round it goes on here. I think this way round, like that. Yep. I think so. You know, I actually forget. So this goes on the board here. No, here. Okay. Sorry guys, I'm just confusing myself now, that's all. So yeah, this goes on this way around. So what we want to do, tiny bit of thermal paste on here. Easy done. So we just get our thermal paste. Which is just some Cooler Master stuff I once used on my computer when I was a bit desperate and didn't have any of the good stuff around. So just blob a tiny amount on here. You don't need much, you need about a grain of rice worth. Probably about that much. You can barely see it. You know what, I'm going to smear it around a little bit. Okay. Then what we want to do is I'll actually add the other stuff to the back of the actual voltage regulator. I think that'll make it a bit easier. So we fit these together like that. Get into the line just right. There's a little dimple inside here. You can see it just there. That aligns with a little hole on the RF unit. You want to line those up. So it's a little hard to show at the moment. What I'm doing is adding the screw. Gee, I don't want to add the screw yet, do I? I'm being foolish. What I want to do is put some thermal paste on that reg. Done. Perhaps too much. I usually put a bit too much on because, like, kind of hard to get the exact right amount. And this is fiddly. There we go. So you can see I'm screwing it all together now. And it's not working. Have I not lined it up? I've not lined it up. This is very tricky. There we go. You just got to screw them together, get it nice and tight. And this actually makes your job soldering it back on a lot easier as well, because the heatsink and the screw hold it all in place for soldering. And soldering, as we know, is easy when things are secure. And hard when they're not. So, we'll just go ahead and we'll solder each of the legs of this, as I've been doing. Nice up to temperature. Okay. Let's solder it into place. Name of this next pin. Okay. Voltage regulators installed. Take a look. Oh, there we go. And if I get this into focus, see that? That looks like a pretty good solder job. I'm going to eyeball it as well right now because it's a little tricky to see it as is. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay. That's a voltage regulator correctly installed, and it has thermal compound as needed. Well secured. Yeah. That RF unit is now refurbished completely. The next step is to refurbish these. Now these are rusted. And the way we get rid of the rust is with some acid. Now I've done some of these previously, so I'm going to go collect some of the ones I've already done. Then again, I guess there's people that may pay more for having the original components, so maybe I'll actually keep this original. What I'm going to do now is pause the recording, and I'm going to clean these up best I can using some acid. So I shall be back, and you will see these magically transform using the power of the internet. And now, as we can see with the power of the internet, these have been magically transformed. Again, they're not 100% perfect, but the surface corrosion's gone, and that'll get more life out of them. And what I did was I used toilet cleaner on them. I used a green scouring pad. I gave them a good scrub, and then when I was done scrubbing them, what did I do? Oh yeah, I put them in a bicarbonate bath to neutralize the acid, rinsed them off with water, and then to get rid of the water, I just gave them a bath in isopropyl alcohol so that there'd be nothing on there to cause any additional corrosion, because obviously they're quite vulnerable to corrosion from the state they were in already. So the next stage now is to reattach this to the NES, and we do that first by reassembling this metal box by placing this on the underside. So we have to, we do need to put it back together. It should be pretty obvious how this goes together. It goes together like this. And we just clip everything together. Press it down, and there we go. Now that's reassembled. It looks like new, or as close as a 30-year-old thing can be to new. This we put on when we're done. We don't do it yet, and that's because we need room for the soldering iron. So what we do now, we have this PCB. I'll give it a quick clean, just a minor clean, because as we can see, there is some flux residues and so on around it that we can get rid of. So let's do that. So we just bit of isopropyl alcohol, and we brush it right off. And that should get it looking significantly better. So let's just give this a scrub. Yeah, as we can see, look at that. It's coming right off. And this is because this is fairly fresh flux. It's not been left for years like the original flux I was trying to remove from this board earlier was. And that's good. You know, makes our life just that teeny bit easier. So we remove this. Job's a good one. Flip it over. Same on this side, bit of isopropyl, just blob it around a bit, you know, this is cleaning, it's not precision engineering when you're just brushing it with a toothbrush, let's face it. We give it a nice clean, get rid of that, get rid of the excess, back and forth, get rid of as much as we can. There we go, this is already looking pretty nice. There was also this area up here that we reflowed, so I'll give that a nice clean as well. Same process, just, you know, nice scrubbing. Give it a good scrubber rubber dubbing. Yeah, you get that up nice and clean. And the isopropyl alcohol acts as a solvent on the flux residues left behind on the board. As we can see, coming up good. It's coming up good. Yeah, my fiancée just sent me a funny message. I've not responded to her yet, and I need to. We don't live together at the moment. She lives in the United States, and obviously you can probably tell from my accent, I live in the United Kingdom, and we've been together now for about 5 and a bit years, I think. Something like that. Anyway, we've been together a while, and we're engaged, you know. Anyway, we're apart, so she just sent me a random message there saying, even though we're a world apart, I like your butt. And you know what? I'm okay with this. I'm okay with this. Yeah. It's a shame so much is going on in the world to prevent travel, because normally we'd at least visit each other, you know? I mean, we're working toward actually living with each other, but it's pretty tricky when immigration's involved, especially when everybody seems to hate immigrants. But, you know, so is life. We are dealt the cards we are dealt, and we make do however we can. Now, now for the fun part, we gotta reattach this doohickey. So we loop that over. So I don't know if you saw what I did, but I'll demonstrate that again. So you've got to come in on an angle like this. So you angle, and that's it. And then you just line up with the holes on the board, which is easier said than done. I think I'm nearly there with it. There we go. There we go. Great. Great. So we flip it back over. We get this nice and flat, which it is. That's nice and flat now. And so what we want to do is we want to solder this back pretty much how we found it. So I'm going to take my nice flat edge soldering tip again, wherever I left it. Here it is. So I'm going to take this soldering tip, solder it back on. Now my iron is currently in sleep mode because the magic of the internet took longer than you might think. You know, getting rid of corrosion, it's a little tricky. Takes a little bit of effort. And I did leave it for a little while so that it could work its magic chemicals. Anyway, you know, when you're doing a refurb job, do it properly. Don't half-ass it. Oh, it thinks there's an error. It thinks there's an error. Now it doesn't. Excellent. Right. And when I say it thinks there's an error, it's my soldering station that thinks there's an error. There is no error. It's just because I've swapped the tip. So I bring it out of sleep. I select the tip. I believe this is a... what was this? A K? K2, was it? You know, I should really double check this. I should memorize my tips. Let's just look real quick. What is it? Come on. So this is a K. Okay. Okay for the K. So select the K on the soldering station. Boom. Now it knows where it is. So it's getting up to temperature. I'm gonna want some beefier solder for this jobby rather than that very thin gauge that I was using. The 3.3, I think was the other one. So, got to clean your tip, get rid of any oxidization. Comes a gun. And then we want to heat it up. Fiddly. Oh yeah, this solder really does not want to melt. Let's try the thinner gauge one. You're going to need a lot of it. Fine. Fine, fine, fine. Don't really want to leave this lingering too long. There we go. Come on. Come on. There we go. That's soldering okay now. So remember, this is more for a mechanical joint than anything else. It's not... I mean, it does connect it to the ground. There we go. That's one bit done nicely. Now for the other bit. Let's get a nice length of solder for this. Looks good to me. Use a little bit more. There we go. And then we do the same for the other connection points like this. You know, this isn't rocket science. It's a fairly easy thing. There we go. We do one side, we do the other side. This is starting to look pretty good, actually. It's connected quite well. So let's give it a bit more solder, because again, this adds a little bit of structural rigidity to it. Sort of the point of these joints. So don't skimp on the solder, be a bit excessive. Admittedly, it does make removing it annoying next time, but you know, let's try and keep it as close to how it was as original as we can, right? So again, just that side. Fiddly job this. Alright, that's pretty much done. Add a little bit more on the edge here. Okay, that's fairly well secured. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to add a little bit of flux, because I love the stuff. Admittedly, I've got to clean it again, which is annoying, but, you know. Again, it's like I say, if you're going to do a job, do it properly. Now, I'm sure this is fine, but I want to leave a nice, neat job. See, that joint doesn't need reflowing, that one doesn't really need reflowing, but I'll do it anyway with just clean a bit of flux. Now, the solder is fluxed as well. It does have a flux core. But I like to be thorough. Done. 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 Okay. Okay. I know this isn't... Yeah, there we go. This isn't the neatest, but it wasn't the neatest when we inherited this thing, was it? So, you know. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to swap out this soldering tip for the smaller one. Although I could probably drag solder this. In fact, let's give that a go. Let's give a bit of drag soldering a go. So we tin it. Tin in the tip. And that's it. We're done. We've drag soldered it. And those joints look perfectly great, actually. They look fine. So that's resoldered. So, if we take a look, we should be able to, with the magic of autofocus, see those nice new solder joints I just did. Which are these ones along here. Yeah, I think that looks perfectly fine. They should all be making electrical contact. Yeah, we're looking good. Right, okay, so this board has now been recapped. I'm now free to replace this. Again, just be gentle. Attach it all firmly. Try to give it even force across it. There we go, look, see? Nice and neat. And what I'll be doing is I'll be putting a little label on this just to say when the capacitors were done, so that whoever buys it, if they ever have a problem and I'm not around to deal with it, the next person can, and they know when it was last done, and they know maybe, oh, he did this, he did that, maybe he didn't do a capacitor correct, or maybe they'll be thinking, well, the capacitors have been done, let me look elsewhere. It's a good pointer when somebody's fault finding to know what's already been done on the machine, and it gives the machine just a little bit of history, right? Which I think is a good thing. But yeah, I think this board is now looking pretty nice. What I'm going to do is clean off the excess flux here. So let's give the camera another focusing. There we go. And we just, do what we've done before when cleaning the board. And I know there's been a lot of excess going back and forth. I've not done this in the most efficient way, but it's certainly thorough. I like to be thorough. So, that, and that. And this just helps get rid of excess flux on the board. Now, it is a no clean flux. I could leave it on there and it wouldn't cause any real harm, which is the whole purpose of a no clean flux. But there we go. So, this Nintendo has now been refurbished. And it's looking good. I don't have any bridge solder joints. I've been quadruple checking that at every stage. It's got entirely new capacitors. All the solder joints look pretty good. We do have a little bit of minor corrosion actually around this controller port hole here. That may come off with a bit of isopropyl, but I'll give it a go. It's not important if it doesn't, and it's not going to cause it any harm. Because where this corrosion appears, this is actually just a giant ground. That's all it is. It's not that important. Yeah, I don't think that's really coming off. Or is it? It is a little bit. I'll give it a bit more of a scrub. But yeah, we're pretty much done. It's just cleaning now. And it's pretty clean anyway. I mean, my next stage after this will be to do the exterior of the console, which is for the one I've done here. It actually just needs a clean, maybe a bit of plastic polishing, just to get it nice. And there will be a refurbished and restored Nintendo Entertainment System. There is also the cart slot for the back that I need to look at as well. I don't know whether I'm going to refurbish it or replace it. Might just try cleaning it and giving it a go first. Just see how that goes. But for the tricky part of a Nintendo refurbishment, that is everything in a nutshell right there. You know, this is all you need. You recap it, that sets it good for years to come. Yeah, there we go. That is a refurbished Nintendo Entertainment System PCB. So I'm just gonna clean this up. I noticed there was a little bit more flux than I'd like on this side, so I'm just going to get one more over all over. Same thing for the teeth. I noticed it had picked up some crap off my desk, so I'm just giving that a rub down with isopropyl. Should be fine. Yeah, looks like it's just got some slight flux residues on it. Isopropyl's fine on it because it's non-oxidizing. As we can see, that's taking whatever that residue it had picked up right back off. There we go. Jobs are good and jobs are good and just brushing its teeth. Nom 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 noms. There we go. Cool. Right. Done. So I'm going to end it here. I'm going to do the I'm going to place the cartridge slot on and so on, and I'll actually give a well, I'm not going to end it here, but I'm going to pause the recording now, and then I'll lead on to show you exactly how it all looks when it's reassembled and how it functions. That's the most important part, is how the thing functions. But anyway, thanks for staying with me this long, and there we go.